Leaders, how many of your team are quiet quitting? If you haven't heard the term quiet quitting, in short, it's the scenario where we've got low optimism and high agency. In practice, this might mean that whilst your team might be physically present, perhaps they've at least partially emotionally disengaged. They are maybe doing just enough to meet requirements. A 2024 McKinsey study found that over half of employees in large organisations are disengaged. Yet the impact of that is somewhat hidden. Because of the economic conditions and the job market insecurity, of that 53%, only 10% of those people were actually planning to leave. The rest were what we call quiet quitting. Hi, I'm 𝗬𝗂𝗯𝗲𝗂, the founder of a leadership consultancy called POP, and I've had the pleasure to work with thousands of leaders from companies like these to address the challenge and the impact of demotivation and disengagement in teams. See, no one wants more than half of their workforce checked out. And whilst actually only 1 in 4 of these, the study found, were actively going about trying to sabotage, the remaining 3, well, they weren't going to be that productive, were they? Nor innovative, nor collaborative, or any of the good things that a good organisation or a great organisation needs in order to outperform long term. So, in this video, I want to share a short clip from a recent workshop I ran to show you what quiet quitting looks like, why it happens, and what it could mean for your team. If you've ever wondered how engaged your team really are, well, this one's for you. So, let's get into it. The third scenario is where we lack optimism, but we feel like we have agency. We feel like we have agency. And this, did everyone here and is familiar with the concept of quiet quitting? Yeah, it was really big kind of post-pandemic. I don't know if you can read this, but there was a whole TikTok trend around people kind of quietly quitting their job. And it meant that they weren't actually going to actively quit, but they were going to step back and just do the least that they could get away with doing, essentially. That was the whole concept of it. But for me, quiet quitting is almost a way of empowering ourselves with agency by saying, you know what, I'm just going to step back I'm not going to get involved in there because I don't believe that it's going to get better. So the influence that I have is to just get through. And again, this can look different. It could be that we put our feet up and try and do the least amount of work. But equally, it could be, let's say, there's a debate going on about a piece of innovation that you don't agree with that is about to launch. It could be that you just stop having the fight on that fight. It's you quietly quit you disengage from having the conversation or entering a conflict. It's that I'm not going to pick up the phone to that person. Like, that's my act of agency, because there's no point in having a conversation with that person again, because I'm not going to get a good outcome. So my act of agency there is by disengaging. It's by not even going there. Really recent McKinsey study found that 53%, over half of employees in large organizations were disengaged. But because of the reality of the economic conditions being as they are, only 10% of those 53 were actually planning their great escape. That's at the moment, given what's going on with the markets. Only 10% of the people actually decided to leave. The rest were just quietly quitting, essentially. They were exhibiting low satisfaction and commitment. And of that 43%, 1 in 4 of them actively disrupting and demoralizing the people around them. And the rest were just mildly disengaged. They're going to fulfill the minimum job requirements, no more. So there's a huge impact of this disengagement. The reality is there's a lot of masking going on. The quadrant, which I will reveal soon, that we all obviously want to be in, is the top right-hand corner. But before I reveal that, I'm going to share an example of where I have been in that place in the past. So in my last organisation that I was in, I started in an organisation not in the leadership team. And I looked at the leadership team and the board, and I was like, I would like a seat on that table. And when I looked at the table, what I observed was a lot of men, one HR
wonderful HR lady, and I was like, I would like, just if not just for some gender balance on that, I think I need a role there. And the business wanted me to do it too. So they kept offering me jobs at the table. Essentially, the role that they wanted me to take on was this head of grocery sales role. And I kept talking about it. And I was like, I just don't want to do it. My background was in retail. I'd been a buyer for a really long time. I'd seen that side of the table. That's just not for me. At the time I was in a category role, I loved category. I think category is enormously empowering for an organization. An amazing category team can absolutely transform the dynamic of a supplier-retailer relationship. And I was like, there is way more here. And on top of all of this, I was getting hugely frustrated because there was one guy at the table who I was essentially doing the majority of his work for him, and yet he was getting the pay and the recognition and all of those sorts of things. So I was either the prisoner or planning my escape. I knew I was ready for a leadership role, and I knew that category was for me. That was my zone of genius. I loved it. I didn't want to leave it, but there was nothing there for me. There was no seat at the table for a head of category. I went to my coach at the time, and I was really frustrated of all of those feelings that come up. It was so annoying. And she didn't actually say this, but what I took from what she said to me, which is exactly what I'm encouraging you to do today. It's not the words that I say, it's what you're taking with the little rabbit hole that you're going off in your own head that's helping you today. What I took away from that conversation was, you need to step up as a leader. If you want that, create it. Lead that change that you want to see. Tweak on the Gandhi quote. Become what I now call a leader that lasts. Take agency, build optimism. So before I end that story, where do you think most people are? Think from a work context. I do this session or a similar session with teams quite a lot. This is one of the sessions that I did recently, and I asked the teams to actually put a little sticker on where they actually are. And it's amazing how honest they are, but you will see that this actually reflects what I'm saying. Majority of people are in that quiet quitting boat. Some feel like a prisoner. Some brave souls decided to admit to their team that they were planning their escape. And there are very, very few that sit within that leader that lasts box.
So quiet quitting might not be so obvious. And as we've seen, there is a lot of masking going on, but it can have serious impacts on teams and organizations. If you are wondering how to spot it, or better yet, how to prevent it, that's exactly what we're exploring in the upcoming Leader That Lasts Masterclass. It's free, and you can find a link in the description below to register. If though you are just here to keep learning, I recommend checking out this video next. And hey, if you found this content at all useful, a like or subscribe would mean the absolute world. It keeps me and my team motivated to make you more content. So thank you so much in advance, and hopefully see you at a workshop soon.